Okay,
Yeah.
so that's one element of it. The second element of it is yes, if you've done the work and we want to re-engage together, let's talk about how that's going to look.
Yeah.
We make a lot of assumptions about ourselves and other people when we said we've done the work and we're ready to go. There's a lot of assumptions being made. You know how the secret to real estate is location, location, location.
Yeah.
The secret to any relationship and connection and evolutionary work: communication, communication, communication. Talk about the experience you want to have. Talk about how you want it to look. Talk about what you are willing to put in. Talk about what you are not willing to put in. Talk about what you are open to. Talk about what you are not willing to experience. And realize that this is a dynamically fluid arrangement. As time goes on, you may go like, oh, okay, I can take in a little bit more. Or no, okay, we got to put a little more distance still between us, or not be as closely knit as I thought we were. So for me, if I'm understanding your question correctly, the re-engagement is a combination of trust, of openness, but also of very clear, explicit agreements and conversations, so that we don't inadvertently re-injure and re-wound and re-harm ourselves. One of the things we also teach, which you're all probably familiar with, is the idea of intent and impact. And in spite of my good intentions, I may still inadvertently cause you harm. And it's part of how we work around that is, if I do something inadvertently to cause you harm, and you tell me about it, first of all, I need to believe you. Our usual recourse is like, yeah, but I didn't mean that. That's not what I meant. That's not what I intended. And in many ways negate that person's experience. Believe them that they have suffered some harm. Look at what you did or what you said and go like, okay, yeah, I can see, regardless of my intention, how that may have activated harm in you. And then you start your conversation, your dialogue. What would you like to experience? There may come a point when you go, yes, when I said this, here's what I meant. And I can see how my meaning wasn't magically telepathically conveyed to you. So let's now find some new ways of speaking and being with each other that will potentially cause less harm, and also potentially allow us to see the person where they're at and meet them where they're at. And these are all skills we can learn. We don't have to just imagine that because we meditate 2 hours a day that we suddenly got these skills down pat. No, these are teachable and learnable skills, and it's so very important that we engage in that work. But and discernment is a piece of it. Discernment to know, as you were hinting on, is this a person, a community, a group that I need to re-engage with, or is it one that I can peacefully release? And that has to do again with our own willingness to be uncomfortable in that space again, or run the risk of being harmed again, or going like, you know what, at this time, my peace of mind and my sense of joy is not worth the risk. So I'm not going to re-engage with you now. Maybe I'll re-engage with you later. I don't know, but it's not feeling right now. Okay. And then that other person's got to deal with that rejection, and that's their work to do. So that's how I would answer that question. But I tend to be someone who is always open to re-engaging. And part of that is also I can't invite you to do the work and then you say you've done the work and then I go like, well, I don't believe you, or I don't give you the opportunity to show me that you have been doing the work. Like if I invite you into it, now there's a part of me that has to create that space for you to demonstrate that you have, and then for us to now learn about each other all over again, and create a new relationship on that. And again, it's always optional. I also want to remind people that it is always optional. You do not need to go back to the people and the places that caused you harm. You do not.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I want
It,
to ask a question
yeah, I
really
was just gonna
quickly
say, you
along the
just
lines of this, which is that, you know, everything I agree with everything that you said. First of all, I just want to lay that out. But I want to take you a step further, and I want to take you a step further beyond the human condition,
Mm-hmm.
because everything we talked about is within the context of the human condition, how we operate as human beings, what we do, how we see, how we perceive, how we shift what we see, etc., etc., etc. But I'm going to throw a word at you: transcendence.
Mm-hmm.
When do you transcend the human condition to say, I choose to see this from a strictly spiritual point of view, or a point of view we can qualify as spiritual, that
Mm-hmm.
basically transcends the human condition, in that I'm not going to participate in your drama, or any of the human condition that you wrapped around this?
Mm-hmm.
When is that a right time to engage? How do I engage as a being that wants to better self, because that's a part of our betterment, is
Right.
understanding when to transcend that which is established all around us, to navigate past the stories.
So for me, it's the both and, as in the transcendence always coexists with the work. So I am a human being and I'm a spiritual being, right? And so for me, that the holding that high watch, the here is the spiritual point of view. Here is the for lack of a better term, I am a being of love and light. I am not just this crude flesh and matter
Mm-hmm,
in these situations.
mm-hmm,
That runs simultaneously with it. So I just said we're spiritual beings and we're human beings, and in saying that, I've just implied a binary,
mm-hmm.
but it's not a binary. It's one of the same. We coexist as spiritual and human beings. Not There's a spiritual side to us and there's a human side to us. For me, I believe, because there is no separation in God. There is no
Mm-hmm.
like it's all God. It's and simply because nothing exists out of that. So the spiritual aspect of us and the human aspect of us are always intertwined. When Jesus, the Prince of Peace, the Avatar of Love, right, decided that he was gonna braid a whip and beat the people out the temple and flip the tables and express that rage of injustice that was happening in those spaces, I don't believe he was any less spiritual than when he was on the mountaintop and Moses and whoever the other figure, when he had the transfiguration, talked to him. I don't, and we, I think sometimes we when we get into that place of the humanness of things, I think sometimes we maybe think that we have removed ourselves from the spiritual aspect of it. No, they're one and the same. That's why I always say this is spiritual work, because we are never not being spiritual, right? When
Right.
we walk into the voting booth and we cast our vote, when we decide where we're going to buy our food from, or what products we're going to order, whether we're going to shop on Amazon or we're going to go to the local artisan, this is all spiritual work, right? Because it's reflecting how we define our consciousness of oneness and abundance. So for me, they're inseparable. So, this is what I believe when Jesus said, be in the world, but not of the world. It's that idea of, yes, we are spiritual, divine beings, and we are always in that regardless of what's going on around us. And there was no point that Jesus did not address what was going on around him, right? Back to that temple scene, you know. So
Yeah.
so for me, the two, I and and I'll, again, another caveat. It doesn't mean that sometimes I don't step away and do my contemplative work, do my restorative work, do my work to replenish myself, or take vacations, or do my meditation work. Like, all of that happens too. I like to say, Jesus used to show up in a town, say some stuff, agitate people, stir up trouble, and then the next verse you read is, and he vanished from their midst. Right? Dude showed up, stirred up trouble, and then hightailed it out of town, went in the desert and meditated for a while.
Yeah.
Right? So so
Wow.
so he was in it, and then, yes, there were times he removed himself from it, but he was no less spiritual or less human in either of those situations.
Yeah.
And I think that's where people sometimes, think of justice work as this is human plane stuff. This is not spiritual transcendent stuff. So we're not going to get our hands dirty. We're not going to get our feet muddy. We're not going to get uncomfortable or make other people uncomfortable, which I think sometimes is even a bigger piece in New Thought. We can't, circles. So yeah, it's all spiritual work. In Unity, we look to Jesus as the way shower. We brag about that. We advertise that. But we tend to have a very selective view of Jesus. We forget Jesus was an agitator. Jesus insulted people. Jesus got violent, right? Jesus cursed the fig tree that wasn't bearing figs. I personally think he was hangry in the moment, and and that happened. That's just my point of view, right? Jesus' first miracle in the book of John was to show up at a wedding where they had run out of wine, which for me I read as that party was hopping. They drank all the wine. They were probably a little bit tipsy already. And what did he do? He gave them more. He's like, we're going to keep this party going, right? And then we're like, drunkenness is a sin. I'm not advocating alcoholism. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying that sometimes we look at certain teachings and we try to adhere to them so perfectly and so religiously and so dogmatically. And don't say to me New Thought and Unity and places don't have their dogma. Dogma is just our teachings. And sometimes we adhere to them so much that we hurt each other in the process. And if there's anything that Jesus' ministry was all about, was like, yeah, these laws are there, but if we are hurting ourselves and each other in the process, we got to rethink this, how we're doing this. This is why he said to the people about to stone the woman, if you haven't committed a sin, sure, chuck a rock. This is why he had the parable of the Good Samaritan. Love God with your whole heart, mind, and soul. As in, remember we are divine beings and live that, but love your neighbor as you love yourself. And I think he could have done a better job of telling us how to love ourselves. Far from me to criticize Jesus, but give us a little bit more about how to love ourselves and how to love ourselves. Coming back to your thing about the discomfort, how to love ourselves sometimes is getting out of our own way, which is uncomfortable.
Yeah. Yeah.
Back to James Baldwin.
Wow.
Love is a battle. Love is a war. Love is a growing up. We've got to grow up.
Got to grow up. Yeah. Wow, Ogun, I am so glad. Nothing is by accident. It was so good to see you at that conference. And yes, we are going to collaborate more for sure. And I want to bring our time to a couple of closing questions, because we are doing the work and it is a heavy lift. And those of us that are putting ourselves in those positions to spread the word, to be the light, to do all those things, to move through those experiences that are painful, so that we can bring joy. So, on a lighter note, what brings you joy, Ogun?
What brings me joy? I'll start by saying I'm a big advocate of pleasure activism. If you're not aware of pleasure activism, go Google Adrienne Marie Brown and follow her work. Pleasure activism is this idea that when we are centered in joy, centered in the things that bring us pleasure, then we are first of all resisting that pull of capitalism to overwork and base our sense of worthiness on how much we produce, how much we earn, all that stuff. To do something just for the intrinsic joy of bringing ourselves pleasure. And by the way, this means not necessarily posting it on social media for the likes, right? Can we do anything anymore without having to tell the whole world about it, right? So there's that. So just do it for your own joy and be okay in that. We've been programmed to go like it isn't happy unless other people know about it. It isn't joyful. We gotta go back to how it was before. But what brings me joy? I have reconnected with my love of photography. Back in the day, I used to take a pretty good picture, sold a few prints, and then all of life took over. And I lost that. I've recently gotten back into that as well. And yes, in spite of what I just said, I do have a page where people can go look at my pictures and buy prints if they want to. But that was not the point. That was just also being in a consciousness of abundance and go like, hey, if that becomes another stream of income, so be it. I have not sold a single print and I don't care. So, and photography for me has also become a spiritual practice. Right? It's like, first I need to notice what's there to capture. Then I have to be fully present to it and myself. I got to breathe. Otherwise that picture is going to come up blurry. And then I will take 50 shots, of which maybe 10 will be good, of which maybe 2 I'll feel comfortable sharing with the world. So then there's a whole level of unattachment and release, right? And all of that. But just being in that space, like it brings me such great joy. And so much of those pictures, I don't even go back and look at. I don't like just the joy of taking a picture. I love to travel and I'm a nomad right now. And for a whole lot of reasons, maybe not financially the best choice I made in my life, but from a pleasure perspective, seeing other places and other people and being immersed in their joy and their art and their creativity, that brings me great joy as well. So I lean into that as well. I love to eat. So, finding good food and breaking bread with people is a source of great joy for me. Before doing this work, I was a music therapist. So as you know, Bukeka, I'm a little bit of a musician. And for the last, for the last 10 years, I have not engaged a lot in making music. And part of that is connected to my grief. My wife and I were a music team together. And since she passed away, it had been hard for me to re-engage in music making without the grief being triggered in huge, overwhelming ways. So I stepped away from a lot of it and would lean in occasionally. In the last year or two has been me sort of regaining music as one of my first loves, because music was who I was before I met her. And then it became our thing. So now I've got to make it my thing again. And when I say make it my thing, know that when it evokes the memories and the nostalgia of making music with her, to hold that in a container of love and hold that in the space of my heart and use that as a form of staying connected to her and staying in love with her, as opposed to it's just a grief trigger. Right. And my whole grief journey has been learning how to be uncomfortable in those triggers and navigating that, and knowing that, in the last 10 years, I say 10, it's 9. We're in 2024. We're not in 25 yet. In the last 9 years, I have lost 7 people who have been really close to me, right? And we also feel like this collective grief of coming out of COVID and all the things. We are defined as much as what we do and gain by what we don't do and lose. And for a lot of us, we just focus on the gaining part and the doing part. We gotta look at the other part as well, and realize that they're all parts of the wholeness of who we are. Our wholeness is our love and our loss as well. So to embrace all of that. But and my last pleasurable thing is I love a good novel. Like I will lose myself in a novel like nobody's business. I'm an introvert, so I love reading, and more over the last few years, reading more novels by Black female authors and queer authors as well, to expand myself as well. So you can be immersed in pleasure and joy and still be doing work towards social activism, right? The two are not indistinct from each other, right? We're both secular and spiritual. We're both human and divine. There is no binary. It's just oneness. There is no binary, but making things the binary, that's white supremacy, that's patriarchy, that's capitalism. So remove the binary. And the one thing I wrote recently that caused a little bit of stir for some folk was when I say we need to remove that binary from God as well. Because in our circles, we talk about divine feminine and we talk about divine masculine, which sort of have their place, especially because for so long, women and feminine thought was removed from spiritual thinking, right? So tapping into that aspect of it, I understand. And there's a place for that. However, when we talk about divine masculine, divine feminine, we have binarized God in our image, right? Yeah. God is not a binary. God is neither male nor female. It's in the scriptures, for God's sake, pun intended. It's in the scriptures. So we have to really look at how we have created these binaries in our life. There are no binaries. There's just fluid and there's just spectrum, and we move in and out of that and up and down and through, and for many of us, we want to be anchored because we believe being anchored means we're being safe. It does not. What happens when a storm's coming to the port? They don't tie the ships down. They tell the ships go out to sea and ride the wave, right? Not otherwise, if you tie yourself down to and anchor yourself in the port, the waves are going to destroy you. So your safety is not in being anchored. Your safety is not in certainty or knowing. Your safety is accepting that we are just flowing in the question, and we're flowing in change, and we're flowing in community and connection, and we're flowing in gain and abundance, and we're flowing in loss and tragedy. It's all part of the divine magic, the divine mystery, the oneness. So to embrace it all. Again, don't give a preacher a mic. I warned you not to do that. Got me preaching now. I'm going to wheel it back. But I do want to say to folks watching and listening, go to my website, revogun.net, REVOGUN, revogun.net. And that's kind of like a landing page where you can see links to all the things I do, the Project Sanctus. Please come join us for an affinity group every first and third Wednesday. Please sign up for my newsletter, Necessary Trouble. I do spiritual and grief coaching, help people navigate their loss. And remember, our law. Also not preventative, what do you call it? Loss that hasn't happened yet. When you are in the midst of losing someone, and they're fading from you or whatever, just so this is primarily the work that I do, and that's where you can find it. And don't hesitate to reach out to me and connect. I'm always happy to bring new people into my life and grow my community. Past the folks I may have gone to church with or my family. My community is now global. And I am so blessed beyond measure. That's the abundance in my life. The people who walk in, the people like you, Bukeka, who we are not a constant presence in each other's lives, but when we show up in each other's lives, it's beautiful and powerful. And we know that even if we ain't talked for months, we got each other's back and we hold in space for each other. And that's what community is about. And that's my blessing. That's my abundance. That's my richness. And, I say to people, we don't know the day where we will leave this earth, but if I left tomorrow, I'm good. I'm happy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Reverend Ogun Holder, thank you. Thank you so much for being on stage on Fave Unite TV. And I also want to thank my co-host, Dr. Enolia Foti, for sharing her words and adding and augmenting this entire conversation with Reverend Ogun. So thank you again, everyone. Make sure you go to FaveUniteTV.com. That's FAVUNITE TV.com, as you can see on the banner here. You can find us on Roku. You can find us on Amazon Fire Stick, as well as Android TV. Thank you so much for being here today, and God bless. Thank you.